Let's see here. Hi, folks. How is everybody this evening? Um, let's see if I can get that. No, that's not going to angle down anymore. That's better. So I was thinking that we might be out on the porch this evening, but there's some kind of activity downtown here. There was an ambulance and a fire truck. Looked like there was a potential for some sirens. So I brought it inside again, and that's okay. Um, we will be joined a little bit later on by a special animal guest. I'll just do without the crickets in the background for this week. Hope you're all having a great week. Got lots of good nature to share with you. And why don't we go ahead and get started? Oop, nope. Let's try that again. Let's go ahead and get started. Ah, all right. In last week's column, we took a look at what's going on with our local insect community in the form of bees or not bees. There's actually two parts to that column. The gist of it was that bees get blamed for a lot of things at this time of year. Um, how many times in the last few weeks haven't you heard someone say, "Oh, I got stung by a bee"? Well, chances are it was a wasp. We'll take a look at that in a few slides, but I wanted to start off with these two really interesting looking creatures. Quick glance, you're probably tempted to think that they are indeed bees. Um, but if we look a little bit closer, this one here on the left, it's got very large eyes and it's got two really puny antennae. This fellow over here, or ma'am, I'm not sure which, over here on the right. Um, Again, very large eyes, forward facing eyes, much like you would see in something that was predatory. And then it's got these claws here meant for grasping not so much flowers as prey. What we're looking at here is a couple of different species of robber fly. The picture on the right, I took that this summer. I think it was early July at Delnor Woods. That little creature landed on me. It didn't fly at all like a bee. It was very direct in its motion, and it didn't seem to have any interest in any of the flowers that were nearby. I'm not sure of the species. I just knew that it was a type of robber fly. This one on the left, I was able to at least get it to genus, and I just took this picture. Oh gosh, maybe 3 weeks ago or so, out at the Hickory Knolls Natural Area. It was clinging to a broken off blade of grass. There were bees and wasps in the area, but this one didn't seem to really have any interest in feeding on flowers like some of the bees were, nor was it interested in the fallen fruit that was nearby, which is what was attracting the wasps. So what we're looking at here is two really good examples of mimicry, flies that look like bees. Now, if we do a side-by-side comparison of that one on the left, that's like I said, I wasn't able to be for sure about the species, but I'm pretty sure Lafria is the genus. And when we put it next to a bumblebee, the eastern bumblebee, it's our most common species in this area. The differences become a little bit more apparent. Look at this long antennae here that's coming off the front of the eastern bumblebee. Um, and then again, the short antenna here on our fly on the left. So robber flies, they are predators. They prey on other insects. Different types of robber flies specialize in different types of insects. I first found out about these guys, oh gosh, it was back in 2007. It was when I worked at Red Oak Nature Center. It was also that was the last periodical cicada emergence in this area. That was when Brood 13 last came out. And was looking around Red Oak. The forecast for the area was, oh, we were going to be inundated with these cicadas, and I was really excited about it. And then I was completely underwhelmed because in a lot of eastern King County, the populations have really plummeted over the decades. So around Red Oak, I heard three or four maybe male periodical cicadas calling, and I was so excited to see one laying on the driveway. Well, I wasn't I was actually kind of sad because I thought, oh gosh, here's one that's dead and we don't have that many to start with. Well, then I looked more closely at it, and stuck to the side of it was what I thought was a bumblebee. In fact, it might even have been the same species because it was a small, dark looking, bumblebee looking creature. And the flight times for that species and that periodical cicada seem to line up pretty well. Anyway, that's when I first learned about robber flies, that they look like lots of different things, including bumblebees. There's other types of robber flies. Some look almost like a dragonfly, but again with the large eyes and the short antennae. Um, but these guys are all of they're always they are such good mimics of bumblebees that it's really hard until you look closely. You're just going to assume that it's a bee. So the next time you see a bee, you may look again and find out that it's not a bee or two bees. So as it turns out, we have lots of flies that fly around mimicking bees. This one I put in, it looks, kind of superficially you might think bee, but and it's actually called the bee fly, but it gets its name not so much from the way it looks, but from what it does. This parasitizes some of our native bees. The female bee fly will lay her eggs in the ground nests of some of our native bees, and then her offspring will prey on those larvae of the native bees. So bee flies make their living off of our local native bees. This one here, sometimes you hear them called hoverflies, sometimes you call them flower flies. Syrphid flies refers to the family, and there's several different kinds. A lot of times the difference is in the markings here on the abdomen, but boy, again, quick glance, you see the black, you see the yellow, and your brain just registers bee. Now, this particular syrphid landed on me. We were having a creek day with our nature camp kids a couple of years ago. So this was over at Leroy Oaks along Fearson Creek, and it was just kind of hanging out on my hand there. This is not a predatory bee mimic. This actually flower fly. It goes to flowers. It collects nectar there. I put this picture in not just because it looks like a bee, but also it shows off one of the best known characteristics of really any fly. Flies are in the order Diptera, which means two wings. It's one of the only insect orders that only has two wings. Most of our insects, our beetles, our butterflies and moths, our damselflies and dragonflies, they'll have two pairs of wings. Flies only have one pair, but look behind the wings on this fly. You see those two light-colored objects, one on either side sticking out. They look almost like little batons. Those are called halteres, and they are the kind of the balancing mechanism that flies use that makes up for that lack of a hind wing. It's the hallmark of many of our local flies, even our house flies. If you look really closely, you can find the hull tears on them. If you see crane flies, you know, those large flies that are sometimes called giant mosquitoes, they have really prominent hull tears as well. So when you think you're looking at a bee, look again because you might not be looking at a bee at all. It might actually be a fly. So the other part of the column, I talked about the stings that occur at this time of year. And yes, bees can sting. But this time of year, and by this time I'm talking about, you know, Labor Day forward until we get a hard frost. When people get stung, it's more often the result of an encounter with these guys here, the yellow jackets. I took this video over at the Native Plant Garden behind Potawatomi. This little, very well hidden hole here. I suspect this might have connected up to an old chipmunk burrow. Look at the traffic in and out of this hole. This is what you want to watch out for. If you're out and you're walking around and you might be, you know, somewhat aware of some activity down low to the ground, insects flying around. It's usually one of two things. If you are walking in a park where someone hasn't picked up after their dog, you might see a lot of insect activity like that around something that a dog has left behind, some dog waste on a path. There'll be a lot of flies. But if it's in the grass or in the leaves that you're walking and you see that insect activity, walk very carefully because it's probably an underground yellow jacket nest. So this is the other creature that gets blamed a lot, or that bees end up taking the blame for a lot of the time. Last year, I was walking. Where was I walking? I was over on 8th Street. And there happened to be a yellow jacket nest on the parkway on 8th, a little bit south of Prairie. And someone had taken some sidewalk chalk and wrote bees with an arrow, I guess to warn the neighbors, you know, look out, you might get stung by a quote unquote bee. Well, I got a hold of some sidewalk chalk and I went back the next day and I scratched out bees and I put wasps just to kind of drive home the point. If you're getting stung in the fall, it's probably not a bee, it's probably a wasp. So with that, let's take a little trip. Actually, let's not take a little trip, but let's meet someone who's perhaps taken a trip up north here from the Gulf Coast. Meet the Gulf Coast tick. This is a new species on our tick radar here in northern Illinois. It looks at first glance kind of like our local dog ticks. Here's the male of the species. These ticks they're about the same size. Picture a small, you know, the edible watermelon seeds. They've gotten smaller over the years. Watermelon seeds have, and if you picture something that's about the size of a small watermelon seed, that's the size of these ticks. Here they are side by side with our local dog ticks. Dog ticks also go by the name of wood tick. So dog tick, wood tick, same species. But the markings at first glance look kind of similar. If you know me and you know how I talk about ticks, you know that I refer to the dog tick female, which is over here on the left. I refer to her as wearing a necklace. And on the right, we've got our male dog tick. It looks like he's wearing suspenders. So it's a pretty easy way to tell the difference between the male and the female dog tick or wood tick. With ticks, it's not as important to know the males from the females because they both need a blood meal. With mosquitoes, it's only the females that need a blood meal. They need that in order to lay their eggs. Male mosquitoes tend to sip flower nectar. They're not going to bite humans. They don't need the blood. Ticks, whether they're males or females, and regardless of species, they need blood meals in order to kind of advance to their next stage. It's sort of like, in video games where you need to get the sword or the magic jewel or whatever, so you go to the next level. Same with ticks, they need that blood so that they can grow and progress onto their next life stage. What's really obvious to me in comparing these guys side by side is the mouth parts. Um, Look at the size of the mouth parts on these Gulf Coast ticks as compared to the shorter and somewhat more rounded mouth parts on our dog ticks. That's probably the thing that would jump out the most at these, comparing these species. Um, you might be thinking, well, why are we talking about Gulf Coast ticks here in northern Illinois? Well, as it turns out, these ticks, they're proving to be kind of mobile. They move at least 12 feet per minute, which is pretty fast for a tick. Normally, ticks they hang out at the top of vegetation, the tips of shrub branches, or on the tops of blades of grass, and they just sort of they wave their little forearms around, and then when something moves by, they just assume that it's going to have blood inside of it. Most things around here that move have some sort of blood. It might be a mammal, it might be a bird, but they will grab onto it, and they will climb up, and they will then latch onto an area of rich blood source. And in humans, it tends to be up on the upper part of the body, but again, if they're really hungry, they might just grab on, wherever they can. But these Gulf Coast ticks appear to be moving northward, maybe not so much on their own power, but we are moving them around as we visit areas of the South, and then we come north. We might be transporting these creatures north with us. This is a map from the Illinois Department of Public Health, and these are counties that have confirmed occurrences of the Gulf Coast tick. And you see, Kane County is still white, but blue indicates incident of they've been surveyed there, and in DuPage County they were found in Wayne, which those of us who live around here know that Wayne is pretty darn close to Kane County. So they are in the area. What Dr. Holly Tootin, she's our state vector ecologist. She works out of Champaign, but she travels all around the state. She and her crew are constantly surveying for ticks and mosquitoes as too, to keep on top and try maybe to get ahead a little bit of the incidence of tick and mosquito-borne illness here in our state. She says that only adult Gulf Coast ticks have been found so far, which indicates that they're not, hopefully indicates that they're not breeding here yet, but they are showing up. I think it's up to 17 counties that they've been observed in here in Illinois. So just kind of something to keep an eye out for. I just want to review a little bit some things you can do to protect yourself. Dr. Tootin has a great phrase. She says, "Don't be scared, be prepared." So when you head out, and we are coming into, there's going to be one more little burst of tick activity before we head into our cold weather months where these creatures go dormant. But if you go out, you're planning on being out in tick country, which is really any place where it's not regularly mowed, where there's tall grasses, dense shrubbery. That's where they like to hang out. Wear light colored clothing. That's going to help you be able to see these guys if they should happen to crawl on you. It might also help if it is a warm day, and we are still having some warm days, aren't we? Here in October, I think it's going to be 80 again this weekend. Light colored clothing will help keep you a little bit cooler. It'll reflect the heat of the sun just a little bit. Ticks use our carbon dioxide emissions as well as our body heat to locate something to latch onto. So wearing that light clothing is going to help you spot any hitchhikers you might have picked up. Now, when Holly Tootin goes out, she wears a full-blown, looks like a hazmat suit. It's all white, and she's got some other enhancements here too. She actually treats those suits. You can buy treated clothing, or we've talked about this before. You can buy permethrin containing repellents that you can spray on your clothing. This stuff, this is what our risk management agency is recommending that we do here at the Park District to help prevent the incident of tick bites. But permethrin, it doesn't out and out kill them, but it's a very powerful repellent because it makes the ticks uncomfortable. You can spray this on your clothing or your gear, your shoes, whatever footwear you've got on, and it's good for, I think it's 6 weeks or 6 washings, whichever comes first. It makes the ticks uncomfortable, and it makes them drop off. Once they fall off, they are more vulnerable, exposed. They may die of exposure once they fall off of you. So this is probably the best thing you can do to protect yourself from ticks when you're out and about. Combine that with tucking your pant legs into your socks. Over here on the right, you see what looks kind of like looks kind of like wallpaper. What that is a strip of double-sided carpet tape, the really sticky white tape that you use to stick carpet down to the ground, to your floor. Dr. Tootin and her team will take that and wrap that around their boots. So anything that tries to crawl up will get stuck on that tape. So these are a couple of measures that will help. Staying in the center of the trail too is because the trails in this area, the forest preserves, our park districts, they are mowed fairly regularly to make it more walkable and also keep the ticks at bay. So this was a photo from our this is our King County Certified Naturalist class this summer. We were out at Dick Young Forest Preserve, and I stepped off the trail. I think this was where we were going to be talking about a bee tree that's alongside the prairie out there. Anyway, guess who stepped into tick country? That would be me. I went home with a few little hitchhikers that day. So staying on the trail is another, staying even towards the center of the trail is a good measure that you can take to help prevent taking home some unwanted little 8-legged friends. Now, Dr. Tootin also told me when we talked a couple of years ago, she said, anytime you go out, even if you've treated your clothing and you've got your socks, your pants tucked into your socks, and you've done all these precautions, it is always a good idea too to take a shower, generally within 3 hours of being out in tickland. Scrub everywhere, and that will help you will help rinse off, scrub off anything that you might not have been able to keep out by other means. Now, should the unthinkable happen and a tick does attach itself, don't light a match and try to scare it out that way. Don't smother it with Vaseline or nail polish. Those things just irritate the tick, and you don't want a tick that's agitated, especially when it's plugged into your skin like that. These guys, they are, they're punctured into your skin, and once they're set like that, fluids can exchange from their body into your body, and they are especially prone to doing that when they're agitated or irritated, upset. And if they regurgitate those fluids into you, that's when the chance of disease transmission really goes up. So taking a pair of tweezers, or there's some different gadgets you can buy too. There's one called a tick key that is very effective. You want to use a steady pressure as you pull the tick, you want to hold as close to your skin as possible because you don't want to leave the head behind. So keeping that pressure on the tick as you pull backward, that's going to um, cause all its mouth parts have all these rows of hooks, and then they also cement themselves with a very sticky glue-like material. So keeping that pressure on is eventually the tick, you are stronger than the tick, and you will be able to back the tick out. Um, you want to clean the area thoroughly. Might not hurt to report the tick bite to your doctor and follow whatever precautions they would recommend. Generally speaking, and I am not a doctor, but the quicker you find the tick before it starts to engorge, the less chance you have of catching anything that tick might be harboring. With that, let's go on. Let's talk about some pretty cool things that are happening out in the woods. Last week we talked about red baneberry, and we read that awesome experiment by Alice Bacon in 1903, where she ate the red berries of red baneberry. I didn't want to leave you with the impression that those are the only red berries that you might run into in the woods at this time of year. Jack in the pulpit, the plant, that's got the spathes and spadix, the little hood, the jack in the pulpit, flower in the springtime. Well, the female jacks, which I guess are Janes, they have formed their fruits, and they look like giant red raspberries. These, I took this picture a couple of weeks ago. These are starting to get knocked down and are kind of falling off on the ground now. They're not edible by humans. There are some birds. I've heard wild turkeys like to eat these berries, but this is something else red you might see in our woods. You might also see the red berries of fall Solomon seal. Um, now, Solomon seal, that's the plant that has these very similar appearing sorts of leaves as you see here in these photos, but true or regular Solomon seal has a dark blue berry that hangs underneath in pairs going up the stem of the plant. Fall Solomon seal, its flowers are at the end of the stem, and that's where the fruit forms. So I took these pictures over at the Native Plant Garden at Potawatomi, where I also saw this. Now, roses don't typically grow in woodlands, but they might grow along the edges, and you certainly will see them in sunnier areas, in old fields and in prairies. This is the Illinois rose, and those flowers have now formed their fruit. Some people call these rose hips. This is a great source of vitamin C. If you've ever had rose hip tea, it was probably made from a type, might not have been Illinois rose, but it was certainly from some sort of rose berry like this. These, have heard of people harvesting these and steeping them, making their own teas from the dried out berries. But this is another nice benefit for wildlife. Planting things like this in your yard will definitely up the food quality as we head into winter, the food availability for some of our birds and other wildlife looking for seeds and things to munch on as the temperatures get colder. Now, this next item, it's actually not a great white shark. It might be a great white mink. I got this email the other day. A woman from the area writes, says, I was sitting on my deck one recent afternoon. I saw something white moving out of the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was an opossum, but it had a fluffy tail. So picture, the humped back of an opossum. They kind of have that arched look sometimes as they're ambling around. She said she thinks it was a white mink. We live on the Fox, and I've occasionally seen brown mink. I took a picture, but all that came out was a white blob. Have white mink been spotted in the area? Well, for this, I'm going to turn it over to you. I haven't heard of any white mink myself. My first thought was, well, maybe she saw a weasel. But we're a little bit ahead of time. Our long-tailed weasels and our least weasels in this area, they do change their fur from brown in the summer to white in the winter. The tip of the tail always stays black though, and we're just a little bit early for that. That'll be happening very soon. Um, Weasels too they're a little bit smaller than our mink. Our mink are pretty husky animals. Um, and the tail, neither one of them has a really fluffy tail, but of the two, comparing the weasel to the mink, the mink would have the fluffier of the two tails. Um, I asked her if she could send the picture, and she said, "Oh, I deleted it." But then she went online and found out how you can undelete things, so she actually got it back, and this is what she sent me. On the left here, we have the image, and then here I tried to blow up the animal in the picture here. So it's moving away from us. This area down at the bottom of the white blob, that's the fluffy tail. And the way it's hunched over, I mean, gosh, it sure does look mink-like. I asked her if it bounded or if it had a steep arch to its back, and she said, it happened so quickly, and she was hurrying to get a picture of it, so she couldn't really take it all in. And she said that it'd been a while since she'd seen a mink move. I asked her if it moved like a mink. You know how they kind of have that sort of undulating movement that they use, especially if they're trying to scurry away from an area. But it's an interesting creature. It's not an opossum, and it's not a cat. Um, it might be a white mink. If more develops on this story, I will let you know. And please, if you happen to see or hear about a white mink, if you could let me know, that'd be awesome. Love to track this down. We have had, there was the white um, squirrels that have been popping up around here from time to time. There was the albino squirrel out on Crane Road, which last spring was still around. I haven't heard about it much over the summer, but it's been around for at least 2 years. There was the squirrel over at Potawatomi too that had the white. Was it the white tail or was it all white? Can't quite remember, but albinism, the complete lack of color, including the pink eyes, or leucism, which is a partial loss of pigment. So the eyes might still be dark, or there might be other areas of darkness on the body. It occurs in lots of different animals in their area. If I find out that it's happened with the mink and we can get a confirmation or another photo of it, I will definitely let you know about that. But it's kind of cool when these things happen. Um, if this is a mink, it looks like it's full grown, and if it can make it to winter time, it's going to have a great advantage. If we get a snowy winter, it might do just fine for the next few months. But anyway, more to be seen on that story. It's also crunch time. So if you look, I came across this. I was walking home from work the other night, and I almost stepped on this. This was over on Horn Street. I have seen so many close calls with squirrels and chipmunks on our streets and on our bike trails. It is definitely crunch time for these rodents as we are moving from fall, progressing through fall, getting ready for winter. These guys are literally going nuts collecting things for winter. Now, our chipmunks, they are what we call larder hoarders, so they are collecting nuts and taking them down into their burrows where they will stay for the winter. Chipmunks don't do what we call true hibernation. They'll spend times in periods of what we call torpor, where they're kind of groggy, but they might rouse from time to time and get a bite to eat. So they want to make sure they've got nuts and seeds stored below the ground. Our squirrels are scatter hoarders, so they are collecting nuts and burying them all over the place so that they can then, mostly through recall, their brains are really phenomenal at remembering where they have buried the acorns and the walnuts and the different things that they find. But this um, they're just in a bit of a frenzy right now. They're not making good decisions, especially the younger ones. This might be their first fall, and boy, they're running out in front of cars. I saw one in front of me yesterday. I couldn't believe it emerged on the other side. It went right underneath the car, somehow managed to avoid the wheels, and ran up a tree across the road. But keep an eye out for these guys. This was also on that same walk. This was underneath a black walnut tree. The owners of this house had actually filled an old recycling bin with the nuts, and there were still this many more walnuts down on the ground. I've got personal experience with this too at my mom's house. I'm there every weekend, and I've been trying to stay on top of the walnuts that are falling from her tree as well. It is just a huge year for these tree nuts. Which I think maybe adds to the excitement for the squirrels. There's just so much richness. They want to take as much advantage of it as possible. Uh, I was looking at this and I thought, maybe this is the year I gather walnuts and then spend the winter cracking them open. Um, I, I actually picked up a small bag full. If you see me some week and my hands are all brown, that means that I actually made good on that promise or threat and I forgot to wear gloves. They're not called black walnuts for no reason. So, just remember, beware. Chipmunks and squirrels, they're not making good decisions right now. They might shoot out in front of your car. They might shoot out in front of your bike. Try to be careful, but put your safety first. All right, so with these walnuts, so this was at my mom's the other night. Um, I was collecting a few there, and the husks are we're getting past the point where they're hard and green. The husks are starting to kind of age. They're getting mushy. I started to wipe the husk off of this nut, and look at what I found underneath. Um, a whole bunch of little larvae. Um, I have, I grew up in the house where my mom still lives. I've picked up walnuts, you know, pretty much every fall for the last 50 years or so, and I never really noticed these guys before. These are walnut husk maggots. Uh, they're the offspring of the walnut husk fly, and it's kind of an interesting little life cycle they have. These guys feed on the husk, in that inner layer of the husk. It can actually affect the quality of the nut meat inside. So I'll see of the ones I picked up if I accidentally brought home any of these, and if there's any difference in the nut meat that's inside. But they are going to overwinter in the ground, and then they'll emerge next year and start the cycle over again. But just kind of took me aback a little bit, and I'm wondering. I didn't have a chance to do a real deep dive on these guys, but I'm kind of wondering when there's this much richness here, and this looks like this would be some pretty easy food for something to eat. Now, walnuts, they do produce that juglone. It's a chemical that can retard the growth of certain other types of plants. I don't know if these fly larvae or maggots, if they have any of that in their system, if they might not be good for things to eat, if they have a built-in protection that way. I didn't see anything feeding on them. I kind of peeked out the window a couple times at some walnuts that I'd opened up, and really everything was leaving them alone. But it's a very, very short period of observation. But something interesting to think about and to maybe observe if you've got walnuts of your own. So with that, let's just, we've done ticks, we've done maggots. Let's go all the way and let's talk about spiders too. It's a spiderific time of year. The picture on the left was sent to me by a coworker here in the marketing department. She is really not fond of these sorts of creatures, but she was out. She's a den mother for her son's Cub Scout troop, and they were camping this weekend. And what did they find but this beautiful spider? This actually happens to be a spider we call the pumpkin spider. It can have quite a bit of variation in the markings. If we go back here, we see this one is bright yellow. This one's more of a pumpkiny orange color. But you'll notice with all that pattern on the back, there's no white. And when we look at the spider over here on the right, again, highly patterned stripes on the legs, but there's white in the pattern. This was found by Ryan, one of our restoration ecologists. He sent the picture in a couple of days ago. Said, "What the heck is this?" That is a shamrock spider. Now, both of these spiders, you can see these females. They have a really large abdomen. They're getting ready to lay their eggs, deposit their egg sacs as we get into fall. Shamrock spiders, they can be this sort of brick red color. They can be orangish in color, much like the pumpkin spider. They can also be kind of a greenish color, like we see in this male. And remember how we know that a spider is a male? We look for the little boxing gloves up there by the head. Those are his reproductive organs. He carries them up there at the front. But this is another color that we might see the shamrock spider. Even the females can be this sort of greenish color, but there is white in the pattern with these highly patterned legs as well. So keep an eye out for these two as well as this one. Jerry, you sent this one in. This is a cross orb weaver. This one is one that we see really frequently here along the Fox River too. I would say most of the orb webs that we see on the bridges over the Fox River, and the storefronts that have lights. These spiders are all living like kings and queens, feeding on the caddisflies and mayflies and other things that come up out of the river. But they do well wherever they are. Jerry, I forgot to ask you if yours was situated at all by an outside light, but these spiders do really well at spinning webs near where they know that there's going to be a lot of insects flying around. Now, Jerry also sent in a picture of the underside of the spider. And if we look towards the tip of the abdomen, there's spinnerets there. That's the silk-making structures on the spider. These guys have 6 different, think of them as like little shower heads or little jets that spin proteins into web or silk. And the different little shower heads, they make different kinds of silk that are used for different purposes. In an orb web, which we can kind of see here in Jerry's photo, there are the rays that extend out. That's the structural component of the web. Those are the stronger pieces of silk that help the web maintain that round orb shape. Then we've got the circular parts that fill in between those rays. Those are the sticky parts. That's what will actually cause the prey to get trapped in the web. That's 2 different kinds of silks. There's another one. Let's go to this one here. Probably the most important silk that the females can create is the silk that's going to encase their eggs for several months. A lot of times these spiders will lay their eggs in the fall, create their egg case, and then they will go off to the great beyond. There is some evidence that some species are able to spend several years. They don't die after the first year, that they go on from year to year. Burnt Heinrich, the famous naturalist out east in New England, he has been watching barn spiders at his cabin in Maine that he says are living 4 and 5 years. But this was a pumpkin spider that I'd been given a couple of years ago, and she was magnificent. Had that beautiful yeah, yellow orange abdomen. She created this, laid all these eggs. It was twice as big as her by the time she was done. There must be some expansion that goes on when they come out. But anyway, she deposited those eggs, and then the next day she looked deflated like this, and then the day after that she was no longer of this world. But this is something that's going on right now. These are gorgeous spiders. Even if you're not a fan of spiders, you got to admit they are pretty cool looking. Keep an eye out for them. They're a little bit, they tend to be locally common. I wouldn't say they're everywhere. I would, in a season, I might see one or two. The cross orb weavers, though, you'll see those. Those are pretty prevalent, and a wonderful opportunity to get an up close look at these really cool orb weaving spiders. So Jerry also sent me the reminder that cup plants they're part of our local landscape. They're named. They're called Silphium uh, uh, perfoliatum, I believe is the species name. It's because the stem actually, the leaf grows on both sides of the stem. It looks like the stem is growing through the middle of the leaf, or perforating the leaf. The way that structure comes together, it allows the plant leaves to form a cup where water can collect. Insects can drink there. Every once in a while, you might find a tree frog tucked in there, absorbing some of that moisture. Well, Jerry actually found some seeds of a cup plant a few years ago, and collected them, and has these one gosh, they've got to be what, 6 7 feet tall, maybe even more than that. She's actually sending some cup seed plants this way. So the cup plant seeds. Let me try that again. Some cup plant seeds are coming this way. So if any of you would like some, let me know. They are, sounds like they're pretty easy to grow. I know we have some stands of cup plant at Hickory Knolls, at Otter Creek Bend. They're a beautiful. They're one of four silphium that grow in this area. They're related to the prairie dock, and the compass plant, and the rosinweed. Those are all silphium that grow in this area, but the kump plant does really well. If you've got a low area or a damp area, they especially like if they can have their feet wet. So keep that in mind. Let me know if you'd like some of those seeds. So with that, we're going to break away here, and I want to introduce you to a little friend that I met today. Um, so I was over at Potawatomi. Full disclosure, I was looking for mushrooms. Didn't have a whole lot of luck. In fact, Potawatomi Scarecrow Fest is coming up this coming weekend, so there was a lot going on. They're putting up tents. They're marking off spaces for the craft show. The squirrels were all in a tizzy. The woodpeckers were making a lot of noise. So I retreated back to the native plant garden, where things are always a little bit quieter. And I was walking around just kind of looking at what might be happening there in the garden. And I looked out into the water, and I found, let's see, where did she go? I found, let me get, I don't want our tech guy. I got in trouble a few weeks ago when I got sand in my keyboard. I don't want to get water on it. So I found this. I think, now I don't know, how to tell if something's an authentic antique, or if this is a reproduction, but this caught my eye. It was in the water of the shallows of the Fox River, and it was just, kind of bobbing there. I think it's the head from a China doll. There's some holes there where it might have been sewn into the body. And what I was most excited about, though, and you know what? She's retreated. Hold on. Um, I had to run back to my car and get this glass to put some water in. There was a leech on the doll head, and I wanted to show it to you. And she was all stretched out and ready to go at the start of the program, but she's gone inside. She's inside here. See if I can get her out. Um, well, gee. No. Anyway, you know me and leeches. We've talked about leeches before. They are really fascinating creatures. They are. Let me see if I can get her to come out. She's inside the head. um, they are. Come on. I can't. I can feel her squiggling in there. I don't want to hurt her. We may have to meet a leech another time. But turtle leeches are pretty common in this area. We've also got some leeches that will attach to fish. Um, they are. Hold on. Almost got her out. Well, you know what? She's adhered to the inside. All right, here she comes. Boy, I wish I had a smaller finger here to reach in and get her out with. I keep saying her. You know, leeches are hermaphrodites. They have both male and female reproductive parts. Um, well, you know what? I'm going to stick her in the water here for a little bit. Maybe she'll come out. I want to see if I can find a few more. I kept some leeches for about a year. How was it? 2 years ago, with an eye on making a tempest prognosticator, which is wonderful contraption that was conceived by a surgeon in London in the 1850s. He saw how his medicinal leeches behaved when storms were coming. They would slide up the sides of the tank that he kept them in, and he thought it was they were reacting to the energy of the lightning in the air. It was probably the change in barometric pressure. But anyway, he created this gizmo. There was, I think he had 12 vials that he would put water in, and he put leeches in each of those 12 vials. When the weather started to change, the leeches would slither up in the vials, and they would bump their little leech heads against a lever that would then push up, and it would they were attached. Those levers were attached to chains that would then ring bells. So when the bells started to go off, the good surgeon would know that a storm was coming. He envisioned this as something he could install in all the ships of the Royal Navy, and he, save countless numbers of lives. Yeah, people invented barometers instead and went that direction, and the tempest prognosticator never really took off. It's been a dream of mine to recreate that with leeches that I find in the river. And I really thought this was going to be the first one I could introduce you to. It's going to have to wait till another time. But she's not going anywhere. I'm going to set up, get a little bit more permanent setup. But for now, she'll just live inside the head in the jar here at Good Natured World headquarters. With that, looks like we got a few chats here to get to. Diane, you said that you have a friend in Wisconsin, with 4 young children who has several yellow jacket ground nests. Is there an environmentally friendly way to remove them? So the environmentally friendly way that I know of isn't always suitable. These ground nests, they're tremendous sources of food for creatures like skunks. And I know of at least 2 yellow jacket nests in the area that have been dug up by skunks. And they do a pretty good job of eradicating them. But you can't call and schedule a skunk to come on a certain day and direct it to a certain nest. We're very close, and I don't know how far north in Wisconsin your friend is, Diane. These things are going to be dying down within the next month or so as the temperatures cool. What's going on right now and why they're so stingy is the queen. This year's queen is she's kind of slowing down. She spent much of the season laying eggs, and the colony has raised next year's queens. At this point, those queens that will be starting next year's colonies are dispersing. They're finding leaf litter, they're finding fallen logs, wood piles, things like that, where they can overwinter. And it's these workers that are kind of out of work. They're out. They're not feeding as many larvae as they were earlier in the season. Yellow jacket larvae too. When they are being fed, they're also secreting a kind of a sugary substance. Well, the adult workers, they're not getting that sugary substance reward from the larvae anymore. So they're out. They're getting in our pop cans, in our beer bottles. They're also taking little protein. Sometimes you'll get them on your hamburger if you're having a cookout. I had one the other day on my arm. I was wearing short sleeves and it was pinching pretty hard too. I think it was pulling little flakes of skin or trying to pull little flakes of skin off me. Um, if your friend is far enough north that it's going to be getting cold soon, if she could just wait a few more weeks, that might help. Um, Otherwise,
She's just above Milwaukee.
just okay, so pretty close by.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the finish line is in sight. If they've made it this far, it's not too much farther to go. But with young kids, they're pretty unpredictable. Um, there are different pest control firms that she could inquire as to their methods. Sometimes it's more of a physical removal as opposed to a chemical removal. If they could do that instead, that would
Okay.
be better.
Okay. Thank
Right?
you.
Sure. Um, okay. So Jerry said that the spider itself isn't by a light, but she's got a lot of company in the yard who are by lights. Gotcha. So yeah, that's I think I've talked about that before. This the spiders. I'll go window shopping in downtown Geneva, but I'm not looking at what's in the windows. I'm looking what's on the windows because of all the spiders that build there by those lights. So good to know. And thanks again, Jerry, for those great photos, as well as the cup plant seeds that'll be coming this way. Um, oh, and then Susie, yeah. So a few weeks ago, we were out wading in the Fox River, and I found a little what looks like a China doll foot that's kind of broken. And this head was found. Let's see, this would have been about 2 blocks north. That's as kind of sobering as this drought is that we're in, there are so many interesting finds being made in the Fox River and the tributaries too, because the water is so shallow. All kinds of old trash piles and things are coming being unveiled as the water continues to recede. Yeah, I wonder if the doll head, because I do have, in fact, I think it's still in the console in my car. I should see if they go together, if there's any kind of markings or anything on them. I'm going to peek one more time. The leech, she's probably retreated all the way into the inside of that. Oh, I so wish I could show it to you, but it's going to have to wait for another time. Maybe we'll meet a leech next week. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Laura, I know you've been out looking at a lot of cool fungus, and we might do I'm sure we'll be doing a mushroom and fungi section again very soon. Because boy, there's a lot of cool. Now that we've had some rain, maybe we'll start to see some of those characteristic things that we see this time of year. Um, Anybody else have anything they care to share? If not, really appreciate your time tonight. Be careful out there with all those chipmunks and squirrels. And hope to see you back again next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Pam.
So long.
Thanks, Pam. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks
Thanks,
a lot.
Pam.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too, Sue. Bye-bye.